All right, so this video, I'm going to be working the Spring 2020 Final Exam Review. All right, so let me share my screen so we can see the notes. All right, so number one just wants me to graph that, and we're going to do that on our calculator. So we go to y equals, and let me turn it on first. How about that? All right, go to y equals. Now we want absolute value. So two places you can do that at. Easiest place is to hit second and then 0 for the catalog, and absolute value is the first thing you see. So hit enter, and then put in -7 minus x. So the first one you have to use the negative. That second one you have to use that subtraction key there. All right, so it looks like what I needed. Now notice their window is -18 to 18 on the x's and the y's. So I'm going to hit the window button, second button, and make that a -18, arrow down, make x max a +18, go to y minimum, make that a -18, arrow down to y max, make that 18. So now my window matches what they got. So we will get one of those four pictures. And if you notice, it moved my graph left. So I would go with C on that one and then move on. All right, number two here wants me to find f of 0 when f of x equals x squared plus 4x minus 5. So f of 0 means put a 0 in for those x's. So f of 0 is going to equal 0 squared plus 4 times 0 minus 5. So order of operations, exponents first, and 0 times 0 is 0. Then I would multiply. 4 times 0 is 0, and then bring down my minus 5. So adding them all together, 0 plus 0 minus 5 is -5, which would be C, and I move on. All right, this wants to know if the graph is a function or not. If it's a function, every x value can only have one y value. Or, remember, we could pass a vertical line along the graph, left to right, and if that vertical line crosses that graph more than once, it's not a function. And if you notice on that parabola, everywhere I put that, it only touches it once. So that is, yes, definitely a function. All right, so here's a bigger one for us. We're going to solve this system of equations. I will do this by hand, and then I'll show you how to do it on the calculator. So let me write my problem. So this is number 4. 3x plus 4y plus z equals -2. 4x minus 3y minus z equals 26. And then 5x plus y plus 3z equals 22. So I would call this equation 1, equation 2, equation 3. So I'm not going to actually teach this while I'm doing it, but I'll sort of try to explain what I'm doing. So I'm going to get rid of the z's first. So I'm going to add row 1 and row 2 to get rid of the z's, because I got a positive z and a negative z. So let me add them two rows together first. All right, so if we add these together, I get 7x's plus 1y. The z's canceled, and that's going to equal 24. So I used row 1 and row 2 and got a row 4 out of that now. So now I got to use the row 3 with one of these other two rows. So what I'm going to do, since that's a positive 3z, I'm going to pick the second row. So I'm going to add the second row and the third row. But before I can add the second row, I got to multiply that whole row by a 3. So that'll turn that into a -3z. So let's bring over the new row 2 after we multiply everything by 3. So 3 times 4x is 12x. 3 times -3y is -9y. 3 times -z is -3z. And then 3 times 26 is 78. Now bring over row 3, which is 5x plus a y plus 3z equals 22. So let's add these. That gives me 17x's. Negative 9 and 1 give me negative 8y. The z's cancel. And then that's going to give me, let's see, 78 and 22. What's that? 100. So I'm going to call that row 5. So now what I got to do is bring row 4 and row 5 and put them together. All right, so now I need to pick a new variable to get rid of. So there's a y and a negative 8y would be easier to get rid of than the 7x and the 17x. So since this is a negative 8y, I need to take this whole row and multiply by a positive 8. That way that will turn into an 8y and then they'll cancel. So this will be my new row 4, because remember that's row 4 right here and this is row 5. So new row 4. 8 times 7 is 56x. 8 times y is an 8y. 8 times 24 is 192. Now I'm not changing row 5, so I'm going to bring it over. 17x minus 8y equals 100. So let's add these together. 56 plus 17 gives you 73 x's. The y's cancel, and then that's what, 292. So to finish it out, I divide both sides by 73, because now I'm down to the single x's, and 292 divided by 73 is going to give me 4. So I know x is 4. So now I can come up to one of my x and y equations, put in for the x and get the y. So I'm going to use this one. So 7 times x, which is 4, plus a y has to equal 24. All right, well, 7 times 4 is 28, plus y equals 24. Last move would be to subtract that 28, and I get a y equals a negative 4. So I know the x is 4, the y is negative 4, so I'm going to go to one of my original equations and plug in for the x and the y. So I'm going to use 3 times x, which is 4, plus 4 times y, which is negative 4, plus a z has to equal negative 2. All right, so that gives you 12. That's going to give you a negative 16 plus my z equals negative 2. Add like terms, negative 4 plus z equals negative 2. And then, like we say, add 4 to both sides. And z is a positive 2. So our answer will be x is 4, y is negative 4, and z is a positive 2. And if y'all notice, 4, negative 4, 2. So you got to have them in order of the x, the y, and the z when you're done with these answers. Okay? All right, y'all, moving on to number 5. Another a graph, but we don't have to graph it. We just got to find the range. Notice, find the range. The range is the y values, not the x's. So I'm not going to go left to right. I'm going to go up and down. So I always start from the bottom. So this is the bottom point, and if you notice, it's over here at negative 3. And we always use brackets on the range, remember, because that number is included. And then this is the highest y value, and this y value is coming over here at positive 3. So from negative 3 to 3 is my range. Remember, the range is the y values, not the x's. All right, number 6, match the inequality with the graph. So what I'm going to do on number 6 is solve it, and then once I solve it, I'll graph it. So number 6, oh, let me see what that is. 8x minus 9y equals -5. All right, so the thing you want to do is solve this for the y. So to get the y's by themselves, you're going to subtract 8x from both sides. So we get -9y equals -8x minus 5. So they weren't like terms, so I couldn't add them together. Now I got to divide everybody by -9. That's going to make that a positive 1y. Oh, hold on, y'all. This was a greater than right here. My bad. Greater than, greater than. So since those were greater than, when I divide by a negative, I got to turn that around and make that a less than. These negatives cancel, making that an 8/9x. These negatives cancel, making that a positive 5/9. All right, so we're going to graph this and see which picture we get. So go to y equals and clear out the absolute value. So we got 8 divided by 9x plus 5 divided by 9. So that's my equation. Now to make it graph less than, remember I got an arrow all the way left of the y1, and where that's blinking now, I'm going to hit enter until I get the triangle that's on the bottom. Enter. That's the triangle on the top. That's for greater than. Enter one more time. That's the triangle on the bottom. That's the one I need. Now, on these, their windows go from -12 to 12 on the graphs. So let's change our window to -12 and 12. And they did that for both the x's and the y's. So once my tables match up, my stuff is all set in, I'm going to hit enter. And let me slide that over there just a little bit so we can see our answers. Now, remember that would be a dotted line because that don't have an equal under it. If it had an equal under it, we'd make that solid. But if you notice, I would go a B, which is the graph I got. All right, y'all, number 7. A ladder is resting against the wall. So here's my wall, and I got a ladder resting against it. The ladder touches the wall at a height of 18 feet. So that's 18 feet where the ladder touches. Find the length of the ladder if it is 6 feet more than the distance from the wall. So this distance we don't know. We'll make that x. And then the ladder would be x plus 6. So I'm going to use my Pythagorean theorem because if you notice that makes a right triangle. So C is always the hypotenuse, and then the other two sides can be A and B. It don't matter where they go. So we're going to use A squared plus B squared equals C squared. A is X, B is 18, C is the X plus 6 squared. All right, so let's see. We're going to solve this. I get an X squared. Okay, let me clear that. 18 squared is 324. That's going to equal x plus 6 squared. Now remember, x plus 6 squared, we got to FOIL that, okay? So let me pull this over here so I can get to FOILing. So this will be for number 7. X plus 6 squared is x plus 6 times x plus 6, which gives me an x squared plus 6x plus 6x plus 36. Adding like terms, you get an x squared plus 12x plus 36. So let's put that into our problem. X squared plus 12x plus 36. All right, so the first thing I would do is try to get everything on one side equal to 0 because of those x squared terms. So I'm going to subtract an x squared. And if you notice, the x squareds cancel and you get 324 equals 12x plus 36. So now it's just got an x without the x squareds. So now we just want to solve for x. So minus 36. So let's see. 324 minus 36 gives me 288 equal to 12x, and then divide by 12. So that's going to give me an x. 288 divided by 12 is going to give me 24. So remember, x is 24, but they want to know how long is the ladder. So to get the ladder, I got to take the 24, add the 6, and the ladder is 30 feet long. So that would be A. All right, this one wants to find the domain. So to find the domain, I take the bottom and set it equal to 0. At this point, if you use quad, A is 1, B is 9, C would be 0. Because there's not a number at the end, that's why the C would be 0. All right, I'm just going to solve it by factoring. These have a common factor, so you factor out the x, and in parentheses, you would have an x plus 9, all equal to 0. Now you set both of these equal to 0. And the only one that really needs solved is the second one, so I would subtract 9 and get x equals negative 9. So my domain is going to be an interval notation. It starts at negative infinity until it hits negative 9, union negative 9 until it hits the 0, and in union 0 till it hits infinity. But y'all watch, I could have went program, went down to quad, hit enter, and then enter again, and I'd have put a 1 for the A, because that was my x squared, 9 for the B, because that's the x term, 0 for the C, and I would have got my 0 and negative 9. And then just write them in interval notation. All right, so this one wants me to construct a difference quotient. So let me write this one on big paper. So 9, they're giving me f of x equals 7x squared plus 3h. And the difference quotient is f of x plus h minus f of x all over h. They're giving us this, so we got to find this. So the first thing I'm going to find is f of x plus h. So you take this equation, and where they got an x, you put an x plus h. All right, you got to foil the x plus h here, and that means write it twice so that you get an x squared plus a hx plus a hx plus h squared. Simplifying the like terms, you got two of those, so that's 2hx's plus h squared. We replace that with that now, x squared plus 2hx plus h squared, and then it's plus 3 times x plus h, because that's what I'm putting in for the x. All right, so next you would distribute 7x squared plus 14hx plus 7h squared plus 3x plus 3h. So since there's no like terms, all of this is f of x plus h. So we put it in parentheses. And then we minus the f of x, which is what they gave us, and put that all over h. All right, so at this point is when everything in the second parentheses cancels with the same thing in the first one. That minus negative 7x squared cancels with that positive 7x squared, and that negative 3x cancels with that positive 3x, because remember, you're subtracting both of these. So everything here always cancels out, so I'm left with the 14hx plus 7h squared plus the 3h all over h. So anything up here that didn't have an h always cancels out. Now at this point, since everything has an h, we cancel out one h from everybody. So this gives you a 14x, plus this one will give you a 7h, plus this one would give you a 3. So 14x plus 7h plus 3. So 14x, 7h plus 3 would have been our answer number 1. All right, 10 wants me to graph this function, so let's go to y equals since we're graphing. I'm going to clear that. To get that radical, I'm going to hit second, x squared, bring up the radical, and then put in a x minus 9. Now we know anytime you attack the x's, it moves opposite. So since that's negative 9, it's really going to move my graph to the right 9 units. Now notice, this is going by 20s. So I'm going to hit my window before I graph it and go negative 20, positive 20, negative 20, positive 20. Now when I graph it, it should look exactly like one of their graphs. So I'm looking for the one that looks like it moved to the right like we said, which would have been graph A. Okay. So if you're ever doing these and you want to get your calculator back to the regular 10 by 10, you would hit zoom and then number 6 for standard, and that'll move the graph back to a 10 by 10, okay? All right, use a graph to determine any maxima. So here's a maximum because it's a high point of a little area, and it has a maximum value of 1 at x equals 0, because if you're on the y-axis, you're on 0 for the x's. So I need a max of 1 at x equals 0, and over here, this is a minimum, so this has a minimum of negative 3 at x equals 2. So the min or max values are the y's, and then the x tells you where it happens. So let's see, that said none on that, and that's wrong. This one said maximum of 1 at 0, minimum of negative 3 at 2. That's what I needed, B. This one was wrong, and then this one had them backwards. Okay? All right, moving on. How can a graph of f of x equals negative x minus 5 squared plus 11 be obtained from the graph of y equals x squared? So let's analyze the moves. That negative is going to reflect across x-axis. That minus 5, since I'm attacking the x, is going to move right 5 units. And then that plus 11 is going to move me up 5 units. So let's see. Reflect across the y's. Those are definitely wrong. So it's got to be one of these. 5 units to the left or 5 units to the right. We went 5 to the right. We reflected across the x and we shifted 11 units up. So it would have to be D. All right, find the zeros. So on this one, since it won't factor, we're going to use the quad. So x will equal negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2 times a. So a is 2, b will be 9, and c will be 3. So let's plug in. We get negative 9 plus or minus square root 9 squared minus 4 times a, which is 2, and c, which is 3. All of that's over 2 times 2. So bring down to negative 9. So our work's going to be under the radical for a little bit. 9 squared is 81. There's only one negative, so that's going to stay negative. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 3 is 24. All that's over 2 times 2, which is 4. So continuing on, I get my negative 9 plus or minus square root 81 minus 24 is 57, and then on bottom is still a 4. So y'all, for me to go any further, I would have to be able to simplify that square root of 57, which I cannot because it does not have any factors that are perfect squares. So since it will not simplify any further, that would be my final answer. And let's see, negative 9 plus or minus square root of 57 over 4 would be C. All right, 14, find a vertex. So the formula for the vertex is negative b over 2a, and then f of negative b over 2a. So a is 2, b is 12, and c is negative 3. So let's get this part first for the x. So for the x, it's negative b, which is 12, over 2 times a, which is 2. That gives me negative 12 over 4, which gives me negative 3. So I know the x coordinate will be negative 3. So to find the y coordinate, I put that negative 3 back into the function. So we're finding f of negative 3. That's going to equal 2 times negative 3 squared plus 12 times negative 3 minus 3. Okay, so that's going to give me 2. Negative 3 squared is 9. So 2 times 9 plus 12 times negative 3 minus 3. That's going to equal 18. That's going to give you a negative 36 minus 3. Yo, for a final answer, that's going to give you negative 18, and negative 18 minus 3 is negative 21. So my y value would be negative 21. So you find what your x is, and then you plug that x into that function to get that y value, okay? All right, this wants me to find the zeros. So to find the zeros, I'm worried about the ones that have a variable. Since the 3 doesn't have a variable with it, I'm crossing it out. So the other factors, I take them and set them equal to 0. We solve them. So the zeros are negative 7 and 7. The multiplicities are the exponents. So since this negative 7 came from the factor x plus 7, its multiplicity would be the 2, because that's its exponent. And since the 7 0 came from the x minus 7 factor, its multiplicity would be 3. All right, next one we're going to graph, and I'm just going to show you how to graph that on the calculator. So go to y equals, turn it on, go to y equals, you can clear that out. So I got negative x, parentheses, x plus 2, close parentheses, squared, parentheses, x minus 4, close parentheses, squared. Now, look at their window. Negative 5 to 5 for the x's. So negative 5 to 5. And y'all, the y's go from negative 240 to positive 240. So they're making the windows where you can see what you need to on these graphs. So now that we got the window set, hit enter. If on that, and if you don't change the window, you won't get nothing like these pictures, okay? All right, so let's see. Got a little hump to the left and a bigger hump to the right. And the only one that possibly can be would be D. Okay, D is in dog. All right, let's see. 17, find the vertical asymptotes. That's almost like a domain problem. To find vertical asymptotes, you take the bottom and set the factors equal to 0. Now, this is already factored. I gave y'all problems where y'all had to factor it first and then do this part. All right, so solve these by adding 8. So x equals a positive 8. Subtract 2. X equals a negative 2. And here we go. X equals 8. X equals negative 2. All right, this wants me to find g of f of negative 8. So that's like g of f of negative 8. So start with the innermost parentheses and find f of negative 8 first. So f of negative 8 would be negative 6 times negative 8 plus 3, which will be 48 plus 3, which equals 51. So now that 51 goes into the g equation, and we're finding g of 51. Ooh, that's going to be a little bigger, ain't it? 7 times 51 squared plus 4 times 51 plus that 9. All right, so that's 7. So 51 squared equals 2601. And then I'm just going to bring everything else down. Now I'm going to multiply. 2601 times 7 equals 18,207. 4 times 51 is 204 plus 9. Let's see, if we add all them up, 18,207 plus 204 plus 9, we get 18,420, which is A. Woo, that's a big number. All right, 19 is the same problem, but they're not giving me a number to put in on this one. They just want me to find g of f of x. So that's like g of f of x. So first we got to find f of x. Well, f of x equaled negative 3x plus 2. So since they didn't give me a number, I got to go to my g, but g is going to be g of a negative 3x plus 2. So when you can't do nothing to the function, that whole function becomes the x's for the g. So g is 4 times negative 3x plus 2, because I'm putting all that in for that x, and then at the end is a plus 4. So distribute negative 12x plus 8 plus 4, add those like terms and get negative 12x plus 12, which looks like A. All right, got to get me a new pen here. That sort of went down on my 12 there. All right, determine if it's 1-to-1. If it's 1-to-1, find the inverse. So let me tell you, this is going to definitely be 1-to-1. But if you wanted to graph it, put in a 5x minus 7, graph that. Oh, let me set my window back. So let me do zoom 6 to get it on a 10 by 10. So notice that's a straight line, but the horizontal line does not cross it more than once. So it is 1-to-1. And y'all, it's going to be 1-to-1 on your test. Okay. So since it's 1-to-1, we replace f of x with a y. So y equals 5x minus 7. Because now we're finding that inverse. Okay. Then you switch the x and y around so that you get x equals 5y minus 7. And at this point, solve it for the y. So to solve that for the y, I would add 7 to both sides. X plus 7 will equal 5y. And then divide both sides by 5. So that cancels. You got your y by itself. And this is x plus 7 over 5. Cannot do anything to that. And then remember, our last step was to replace the y with the f inverse notation. And that's going to equal your x plus 7 over 5. So I would go with A on that one. So remember, replace the f of x with a y, switch the x and the y around, and then solve it for that y. Once you solve it for the y, replace the y with the f inverse notation, and move on. All right, 21 wants me to graph, and I noticed that these want to use negative 5s and 5s for their intervals on here. So go to y equals, hit 3 exponent, x plus 2. Older calculators, close your parentheses. New calculators, arrow down off of that exponent and put plus 2. Okay? But the older ones, you got to close parentheses after you put in the x plus 2, where it don't know what your exponent is. It just thinks it's the x. So now let's go to window and go from negative, oh, what's that, negative, hell, it looks like negative 6s. So negative 6, 6, negative 6, 6. Now my window looks good. When I hit graph, it's going to look like one of these pictures. So it looks like it sort of goes across there and then rises. Ooh, that goes too far. That's down. Look right here. It goes across and then it curves up before it crosses the y-axis. So I would go with D as in dog. All right, 22, convert to exponential. So we're going to get rid of that log. So the base is 9. The exponent is the t, and 9 to the t equals 729, which looks like D. So either that's a 9 or a G. Either way it works. All right, express in terms of sums and differences. If it's on top, it's added. If it's on bottom, it's subtracted. And I'm going to distribute that log to everybody. So I get a log x to the 6 plus a log z minus a log y to the 9th. So since the y to the 9th was on bottom, it got subtracted. Now, only thing you want to do is bring those exponents down to the front. So you get a 6 log x plus the log z minus 9 log y, which looks like, ooh, watch out, they put a multiplier there. So 6 log x log z. So I would go with C. Y'all watch out, they put multiplication on some of these and they're trying to get you. All right, so this one just wanted me to work that formula, and they're telling me t is my variable, and they want to know how many people would there be after 1 year, which means t equals 1. So I'm going to put a 1 in for that t and see what we get. So 1,200,000 e to the 0.05 times 1. All right, so here we go. Clear that screen. 1,200,000. E is second, ln, because we want the one with the exponent, and then it's 0.05 times 1. Remember, older calculators, it gives you parentheses, so do your 0.05 times 1, close parentheses. All right, so we're going to round to the nearest year. So what am I getting? I mean, to the nearest person. So let's see. I got 1,261, 1,261, 525, because you don't round that up because that's a 3. So I would go with B as in boy on that one. So not bad. You can just punch those in and be done, okay? All right, y'all, and then it looks like my last one here. So number 25, solve. So I got 3 to the 12 minus 2x equals 6,561. So what I would do, since I'm not going to attempt to rewrite these bases, but I will tell you there is 3 to an exponent that would give you that, but that's a hard number to figure out because you'd have to multiply 3 a whole lot of times. So let's just do this the easy way. Bring that exponent down by taking the ln of both sides. So what that's going to do is bring the exponent to the front. So 12 minus 2x times ln of 3 will equal to ln of 6,561. So your next step, try to get this part by itself by dividing by that ln 3 on both sides. So let's see what that'll do. You got 12 minus 2x. So now I don't need parentheses because I got rid of this ln 3 factor. But let's see what this side gives you. ln 6,561, close parentheses, divided by ln of 3, close parentheses, equals 8. So that whole thing gave me an 8. All right, so now to finish off, solve for the x. I would subtract 12 from both sides. So negative 2x would equal a negative 4. And then there you go, divide by that negative 2. So that x actually becomes a positive 2. A is in alpha, and then you got it. All right, so I wanted to go back and show you how to do a couple problems on the calculator. So remember, number 3, I did this by hand. So you could use the matrices of the calculator. So you see where it says blue matrix right there? Hit the second button and the x negative 1 button and bring up matrices. Now I'm just going to put everything in A. So you go over, we're going to edit it first. So hit enter on edit. Now these are 3 rows by 4 columns. So that's going to be a 3 enter by 4. It's always rows by columns. Now, we're just going to put in our numbers. 3 enter, 4 enter, 1 enter, negative 2. It's going to jump down to the next row. I got a 4, negative 3, negative 1, 26. Last row has a 5, 1, 3, 22. So I got all my numbers in, so I'm going to quit the screen now because I know my matrix is in A now. So what I want to do is I'm going to reduce that matrix. So hit second matrix. This time I want to go to math, and I'm going to arrow down until I find RREF and hit enter. That's reduced row echelon form, and that gives me all answers in simplest form. So now that I told it I wanted to reduce it, I got to go back by hitting second x negative 1 to get my matrix. And since A is where I put everything in that 3 by 4, I'm just going to hit enter. So what it's saying is now I'm going to reduce this matrix when I hit enter and get your answers. The answers are always in the last row. The top number is the X, then the Y, then the Z. And if you remember on that one, 4, negative 4, 2, 4, negative 4, 2 would be my choice B. Okay. Now, let me see. I think there was another one I wanted to show you. Oh, on that radical, I told you one way to get it was through second catalog. So let me graph this in again. So since that's a square root, the other way you could have got it was math. And then if you notice, oh, hold on, which one am I doing? The radical? My bad, that's just right on the front. Oh, it was absolute value, y'all. The very first one, I think. Yeah, I showed you the catalog on the absolute value. So the radical one, you didn't got to worry about that because that radical is right there. But on the absolute value, I went second catalog, member, and I brought that up and hit enter. Well, I'm going to show you the other way. The other way is to hit math, go to number, and the first thing you see is ABS, and hit enter, and it gives you the absolute value bars, okay? So either way, and then I did what? A to the 7 minus my X. Either way, you're going to get that graph. Oh, hang on. Let me see. Let me fix this. Zoom. Whoops. Zoom 6. And there we go. So remember, I had changed that window a while back. But no, on a 10 by 10, you'll get your pictures. And I think that was about all I needed to show y'all on here as far as the graphs go. Yeah, that was it, y'all. So study that and good luck.